I want to talk about an interesting topic, the paradox of prosperity. With our prosperity, there's a paradox that sneaks up on us that has the potential to rob us of the very things we want the most in life. The three things that catch you, that could really rob you and me, are complexity, comfort, and complacency. And I remember reading in King David's life, at the end of his life, with the wisdom and all the mistakes he'd made, he's pouring his heart out to the Lord in 1 Chronicles, and he says in chapter 29, he acknowledges that all the resources he's acquired come from the Lord and are intended to be used for him. And then he prays this for his son Solomon. And please give my son Solomon an uncluttered and focused heart, so that he would obey what you command, live by your directions and counsel, and carry through with building the temple for which I have provided. So three big things stood out to me that address this idea of complexity, comfort, and complacency that rob us of joy and impact. Is David in his wisdom could see that his Solomon might get a cluttered and unfocused heart because he had so much opulence and so much coming his way. Instead, he was praying that he would obey the Lord's command, live by God's directions and counsel, and then carry through and stick with it. You know, when Bob Buford was writing the book Finishing Well, he captured 66 stories of people who were finishing their life well, when most people squander it. Dr. Howard Hendricks said to Bob Buford that after 60 years of studying the Bible and teaching the Bible at Dallas Theological Seminary, he felt that more than half of the biblical leaders that we know about in the Bible, leaders in the Bible, didn't finish well. So there was a friend of Bob's who read the manuscript for Finishing Well and wrote 5 pages of notes. And Bob took it to the farm one weekend, read it through, put notes on it, and sent me a PDF copy of it. I read it through and I said to myself, this is packed full of wisdom. I'm going to do these in my life. I'm going to do these things to finish well. But I made a note to call that gentleman back 15 years later and ask him one important question. How did it go? And so I did. I called him back 15 years later. And before I called him, I sent him his own document, 5 pages of notes he had written 15 years earlier of what he wanted to do in order to finish well. And when we got on Zoom together, he looked up and he said, one simple thing: I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And it just struck me as, wow, how could that be? You had so much clarity and so much insight 15 years ago when you sold your company. You've had complete freedom for 15 years, and yet you didn't live the life you wanted? What on earth happened? So I said to him, well, look, God is a God of a second chance, a third chance, but before we dive deep into that, tell me everything. Let's unpack what happened. And the 3 big things were complexity, comfort, and complacency. So he had a big exit, but with that comes a lot of complexity. He had 114 K1s and 3 homes, and what he didn't realize was that by having 3 different places, he was in 3 different places at a time. His friends had multiple homes too. So they were never in the same place, or seldom in the same place. And he got disconnected from his friends. He got disconnected from his church. He got disconnected from the work he was doing, building affordable housing. And over time, it led to just comfort. And so little by little, comfort sneaks up in your life. One of the things I've noticed is I'm less likely to take a risk. I started a ministry 3 years ago called ardentmentoring.org. And I remember thinking, well, what if this fails? Or startups take a lot of effort. And I almost chickened out. But now, years later, it's making an impact in lots and lots of people's lives. I'm so glad I didn't chicken out. But I've noticed in my life, comfort sneaks up, and it's likely to rob me of what I really want most, is to live out my calling. And then little by little, your heart can become complacent. And even in our family, we have our kids give out of our giving fund, and we at the end of the year, we talk about what they chose to give to, the strategy of the ministries they gave to, and one story of someone whose life was changed through that. And my son-in-law has given to a mission near him that he walks by in downtown DC on his way to the office. And to me, it's not a very highly leveraged ministry. You put $1 in, it pays for $1 of food, it pays for $1 of heating for people that otherwise would be homeless. I like ministries like microfinance, for example, where you help build an enterprise and it employs people, and you get the capital back, and it brings the gospel, and it keeps multiplying and compounding, and there's leverage. And Chris's thought, my son-in-law's thought, is, Dad, these people are shivering. These people need help now. They're right here. I walk by them. Can't we just give to this? Can you feel in that how my heart got a little disconnected and complacent? And so I find in my life, if I'm not careful, the paradox of prosperity is it sneaks up on you. I remember Charlie Munger saying that he uses an inversion strategy when he invests. He inverts the problem. He learned it in World War II when he was a meteorologist, and he was charged with making sure that pilots could land and take off safely in aircraft carriers. And he didn't know much about how that works or what the big factors were when he started as a young soldier. And then he had this idea that he would invert the problem. Now, Charlie Munger was Warren Buffett's partner, passed away not long ago, for years, one of the best investors out there. And he learned this during World War II, where he inverted the problem. And he said, what if I wanted to kill as many pilots as possible? Which is a startling question. He realized he would do two things. After studying it and looking at the data, he would allow pilots to get in a place where their wings iced up and they lost elevation, ended up in the ocean. He would allow pilots to get to a place where they didn't have the visibility they needed to land safely on an aircraft carrier, but they didn't have the fuel to get back to land. And so he became great at keeping pilots alive because he inverted the problem. And so I ask myself this inversion question. Instead of what would it look like for me to live a life where my life was the soil that produced 100-fold, what if I wanted to squander my life? What if 100 years from now, I wanted to be so deeply disappointed that the things I invested my life in all dissipated? They all disappeared. I had nothing to show for it. What would I do? Well, the three things are: I would allow my life to get more and more complicated. I would allow my life to get more comfortable, and I would allow my heart to become complacent. So for Linda and I, there's some very specific things that we've been working on, and we still have a long way to go. We're going to fight this for a long time because it sneaks up on you. But for example, we used to have a sailboat here and jet skis, and now our kids are all grown. They have little kids, and so when some kids come home, they have babies, they want to be on a pontoon boat. Other kids come home, they want to go out jet skiing. Other kids want to wakeboard. Well, you could start accumulating every kind of boat possible. And we asked ourselves, how can we do this well as a family? And we sold it. We got rid of the boats. We joined a boat club. The boat club enables them to access the boat they want. I don't ever clean the boats. I don't have to go buy parts for the boats. I don't know the names of the boats. I don't have to fill them up with gas. It simplifies my life so that during the time we're out on this lake, I can focus on the people, the kids, their kids, the time we have together, the truly priceless things. Linda and I set a limit on our spending just to try to declutter our lives. I was telling some friends recently, I have a couple of classic cars and they take a lot of maintenance, and maybe I need to simplify some of that. One of the little hacks that I've tried, and this is a little bit embarrassing, but that's okay, is I just travel with a backpack now. And it's a reminder to me as I'm packing of how simplified life can be and how much joy you can gain in just decluttering your life. There's something so freeing when I throw my backpack on, it's 13 pounds or whatever. I've gone to Germany for our daughter's wedding for a couple of weeks with just a backpack, and there's so much freedom you find from the things you leave behind. You'll find hacks in your life that remind you to keep it decluttered, to not let complexity, comfort, and complacency sneak up on you. So my encouragement to you is to look under every rock in your life and ask yourself, what is sneaking up on me in complexity? My investments, my club memberships, my homes, the things that are not high value but that are adding complexity to my life. Where are the areas where I'm no longer willing to take a risk? I'm so comfortable, I don't want to disrupt my calendaring because I'm unwilling to impose my calling into my calendar because it reduces my flexibility. And then lastly, where are the areas where your heart could be growing complacent? How could you purposely force yourself into situations that break your heart for what breaks God's heart, and take your family on the journey there with you?